Hey guys, Shay here from Fool on a Journey, and it has been a very long time since I filmed, but that seems to be perfectly timed because it has been 2 years since my last What My Practice Looks Like video. I'm gonna go ahead and link that below just in case you haven't watched it. It's only a few videos back, and the title of that video was Tarot Collection, Organization, and Practice. So if you want to watch that one, you can, to see how the change has happened. Because while this is going to seem like a huge departure if you watch these back to back, they were very slow, gradual changes that happened over time. And I think it helps to have someone talk about looking back. Little small changes over time create something that's really powerful and really helpful. So essentially what happened in working through my previous practice was that I realized so much of it was focused on immediate right now or the past. You know, how did I react to things? I wanted to react better. I wanted to sort of evaluate where those reactions were coming from, but it was all very past focused, and what was missing was the future. And I knew that as I was evaluating that in my journal and realizing that that was something that I was lacking, that was something that I wanted, because what I was looking for was to create change. I wanted to use these beautiful tarot and oracle decks that I love so much, just on their own, to actually change my life. And I knew that that was possible, and I wanted to figure that out. I wanted to put my finger on that button. How do you use divination and cartomancy to change your life? Because I was so focused previously on looking backwards, there wasn't forward looking and changing and planning happening. So that was sort of the first realization that I had. And then you sort of start realizing why do you do the things that you do? And that was very helpful, to really sit down and ask myself, why do I pull cards every day? And to realize that that really is just a joyous thing. It starts my day in the right frame of mind. I know that things are going right when my morning routine happens the way that I want it to happen. I'm someone who's very connected to my routines, so I feel very energized by my morning went exactly the way I wanted it to kind of feelings. So my daily practice actually looks very similar to what it did in the previous video. I'm using that same altar where I have the deck sitting on the shelves above. I still keep 12 decks sitting out. And then I pull a 13th deck that is the deck of the week. Have that main deck where one card comes from that main deck every single day, because I love the idea of using cards to make the question. That is something that has always really inspired me. I've always come up with really good, weird questions. And even though the journaling that I do daily is very brief, sometimes as little as 3 sentences, maybe a paragraph, it's always intriguing to let it just be totally random. And the card combinations, because of having a random aspect of how I choose decks on that shelf, are very weird. For example, one of the recent ones that you can see on my Instagram was the Space Age Lenormand with the Tarot of Pirates, and the Space Pirate thing was just really cool, and I enjoyed it a lot. Another deck pairing that was really cool recently that I would have never chosen by myself was the Augenblick Oracle and the Cosmic Tarot. And specifically that resonated so intensely because one of the cards that I chose from the Oracle was the Matadors, and then I had 2 very finely dressed, almost like matadors, men in that reading, and so it just went together perfectly, and that's just never a deck combination that I would have chosen myself. So that sort of curiosity, explorative thing going in the mornings every day is something that I do get enjoyment out of. It makes me happy, and I think that that's important in a daily thing. and I'm definitely going to keep doing it. And what has really shifted is that Sundays, when I do the spiritual part of my tarot practice, when I am doing what I would call divination in a way that I don't think my dailies are, that is no longer connected to the dailies. I have sort of divorced those from each other because that practice became the part that had to shift. That Sunday focus where it was really purposeful and meaningful and I was journaling multiple pages, I knew that needed to stay, but that the way that it was going and what I was looking at needed to be what shifted. So that's what I started shifting. And as I looked into how I needed to sort of change and reshape that, I also had to admit some things that I think maybe some other people could benefit from hearing. So the first one was admit what doesn't work, even if you like it. And that was hard. The easiest example of that would be, for me, the Wheel of the Year just does not work for me. I don't have a good way to enmesh that into the calendar and planning for my job and for my life, and so it just doesn't fit, and it feels like this total like on the side thing. I could never really do any of the Sabbath stuff on the Sabbath. Those would be things that kept being put off. Like I would okay, well, I'll just do it 2 days before or 4 days later. And then the reason that I hung on to it for so long was because it felt like the connection to the wider community. You see a lot on the social media of everybody sort of celebrating those Sabbats and doing specific spreads for those holidays and things. And it was like I wanted to feel connected, and I had to admit that wanting to feel connected was totally normal and fine, and it was good for a very long time, but it just didn't work. What works is a straight calendar. Like I can do things for a month, I can do things for a week, but when you're talking about trying to remember that you've got this special day on a random day that changes, I just couldn't hold on to that. It wasn't something that I could maintain. And so I just had to take a deep breath and accept that was not for me. It did not work for me. It's a wonderful, beautiful practice. I think that it's really cool that so many solo practitioners have that way of sort of reaching back and connecting with the broader community, even if they do not identify as pagan or Wiccan or, whatever you identify as. A lot of people with alternative spiritual practices, having some kind of connection to community is important. And if you're still hanging on to that, I understand. But if it doesn't work, just admit that it doesn't work and be ready to move on. So, what did I do instead? I implemented quarters. I liked the idea of still having 4. I liked the idea of these 3-month sort of spans of focus. Because when I'm talking about purpose and really channeling all of my energy into a spiritual purpose, I also am not going to ignore what I learned about looking at all of my behaviors in the past, which is what I had been doing previously for years. And I am not good at sticking at it really hard for very long. So I wanted it to be a lengthy enough amount of time that I could get some things done that felt significant, but a short enough time that I wouldn't totally lose the energy. And the changeover sort of would be something that would help rejuvenate me. So, quarters, 3-month time periods. What do we do with them? I'm sorry that the cards are a little bit crooked and that you've been looking at them a little bit crooked, but you can see all of the main points that I'm trying to get at. So we'll just sort of walk through that. In the beginning of a new quarter, which we actually just had one, July started a new quarter for me because I'm doing literally just the 3 months, next 3 months, and July is now quarter 3. So these are actually some cards that were worked with during the second quarter. So I'm going to talk to you about them specifically because I want you to understand how things went on. The 3 cards here are the project. This is the purpose, this is the drive, this is what we're going to do for this quarter. And the first quarter, I did total random, and a house dropped into that first space in the first quarter, and I realized I liked that a lot. So I did intentionally make sure that I got a house in that one. And so now for this third quarter, when it started, with the astrology deck that I chose to use, I pulled all of the houses out to shuffle just those, because that's such a perfect implementation of this area of your life, and then what are you going to do with it. And I do go ahead and totally shuffle at random everything left in the astrology deck. So this is the Arcana of Astrology. My house was the 4th house, which is home and family. Then you've got Pallas Athena, which is strategy and like long-term planning, and very detailed planning, like backup plans for backup plans. We've got plans A through F ready to go in the event that A and B don't work. So like intense planning. And then Venus, which is the luxury, is the reveling in the beauty and the sensuality, like the actual senses of things. What do they feel like? What do they taste like? What do they smell like? And that combination sort of led me to, I want to work on my house, and I want to better organize, so the planning, how I can luxuriate more in my house. And I wanted that to be my focus and my project. And I made a very sort of extensive list of all these little things that like I knew I hadn't been doing, that are like just home upkeep things that are like the annoying, not everyday kind of chore that just are really easy to put off. And especially when you live in a rental like I do, it's even easier to put off. Like you just don't want to think about what do the baseboards look like in the master closet? I don't even know. Like those kind of things that you just are not the normal everyday chore type of cleaning stuff. So that is where we start. You've got to have a project, you've got to have a purpose. So we get that. Then we need some help. So I chose a deck that is full of mostly personality types. I refer to those types of decks as companion decks. The one that I used to pull the lunar masculine from was the Divine Muses Oracle. I did actually go ahead before pulling that card and remove some of the cards in the Divine Muses that are not personalities. For example, there's a card in the Divine Muses Oracle that is just boundaries. So like that one that one got removed, but like a majority of the cards are like Muse of the Arts, Muse of History, Lunar Masculine, Solar Feminine, where it like feels very much like a personality. And the person, the Lunar Masculine, is going to be my companion and my guide. Mainly the word that you would use in this instance is the guide for this quarter. So I'm going to be led by the Lunar Masculine for the whole second quarter. And it was really great, actually. Journaling process, that is where this next deck comes into, was actually probably one of the most meaningful things that I really hit on. It was another shift from quarter 1 to quarter 2. My intention was to use a variety of types of decks, and I don't know where the idea came from, but it came to my mind that my keyword decks were sort of being underutilized, and I couldn't figure out what it was that they could really be doing that was different or that was really unique. And somehow I just got this idea that they were the voices of the companions. And the Oracle deck that I chose specifically after I already had the companion selected is the Archetype cards. And they were perfect. Everything about this sort of screamed, I am made to be the voice of the lunar masculine. It's direct, but it is not overly forceful. There is a softness to the art, but there's also a clarity. These two guys came up, oh, sorry, there's a glare, a lot. So this is the survivor on this side, and this is the strategist. And every time I would see him, I would be immediately reminded to look back and remember that we are supposed to be strategizing. Hello. It was really good. And those spreads became the voice, and the journaling that I did with those spreads became like having a conversation between me and lunar masculine about how to get those things done. And it was really powerful. It was just very moving. I don't know how else to articulate that well, but it was really moving to feel like I was really getting a good connection, and that I had picked the exact right deck to speak for lunar masculine and feel like we were working together. So this deck would stay out. Those 4 cards would stay sitting on my altar. And then there would be one other card that would sit out, but not for the whole quarter. These cards were only out for a month. I was intentionally looking to draw in a like spiritual element, like a spiritual power. So I chose decks that were very obviously esoteric. It's got all of the symbols, the Hebrew letter. I wanted it to feel like something that felt very occult. I wanted I wanted to pull in the associations with the Tree of Life. And strength was good, and I felt like we had it was kind of a nice reminder, sort of sitting there. This one was interesting. This was for May. And I remember trying to sort of ignore my associations. This is a very RWS depiction of the Eight of Swords, and I was trying to really kind of disregard that and focus really on the Jupiter in Gemini and, being in the sphere, the 8th sphere, which was helpful. But there was also sort of something that kept connecting me to this figure, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and I was just getting a different reading on it, and I just didn't really do a lot of journaling about it because it wasn't settling correctly. And I remember thinking that I had done some journaling about what I really wanted that card to be about before I drew this one right here, because this one was the one where I had the moment where I was like, that's what this is. I was writing in my journal about how things were not going well. I had a day off where I did literally nothing. And I was like, okay, that was the day. That was the day where I didn't have any work, and I should have been working on the house, and those things, I know that they're going to happen. I know I'm going to have days where I'm just tired, and it's totally acceptable. But it's like those were the days that I was supposed to really focus on the purpose. Like that's the whole point here. And as I realized, I was talking so much about the things that weren't working, and I was realizing that I associate cartomancy and reading for myself very much about telling me what I did not do and what's not working and what I don't want to do anymore. And so before I drew this card, I remember thinking, I just want a card to tell me about what I'm good at. And I don't even know that I necessarily articulated that, but I wanted a positive reinforcement. And when I pulled out that 2 of Cups, I knew that it was not a spiritual power. It was a superpower. It was you got this thing that you have right here is something that you have that's amazing, and you don't need any help with it, and it needs no work whatsoever. Because as soon as I pulled this, these folks look very much, I can't tell where the best lighting is, I'm sorry. These people are madly in love. I almost feel like they're getting married because she has the flowers there, and I thought immediately of my marriage. And I am deliriously happy in my marriage with my husband. We are happy together. We don't need to work on our relationship. We obviously are not always deliriously in love, but we communicate incredibly. Like, I don't need work on us. And when I pulled that card and knew that's something that I'm doing great, that does not need any help, I started referring to that card as the superpower, and we'll be doing that for this entire next quarter. And the first card that I drew for my superpower for July was really awesome, and another great reminder of something that I am good at. I don't need any help. I don't need to work on it. It's just something I am already just badass at. And if you need that reminder, if you need that pick-me-up, I strongly suggest doing a draw that is asking, like, what am I good at? Because it's really, like, just boosting. Like, it feels so good to look up at my altar from, so the chair that I do most of the homework from, I can see the altar where I set out just these cards, and it's sitting there reminding me, you're really good at this. Hey, don't forget, you can do this. Like, whatever else is not working, you got this. And that was really helpful and encouraging. So please try that if you're somebody who needs a little more encouragement. So the next thing I want to talk about are the Sunday spreads. The majority of the Sunday spreads are 3 cards from the voices, but there are a couple of other spreads that I was trying, and I want to be totally honest that also, like with these cards that I was talking about right here, they are in a sort of workshop phase. They are not totally nailed down yet, except for 2. One actually wasn't quite done yet, but I feel good about it. So the idea of using a deck that is a little bit off kilter. So like you're seeing, I should have pulled one that you can already see. Let's give me a minor. Perfect. Okay, so this does not look like the RWS 4 of Pentacles, which is intentionally what I wanted. I wanted to pull a deck that didn't make my brain go immediately into like rote meanings of tarot cards. I wanted it to feel very like emotion based. Some people refer to it as surface reading, but that makes it sound shallow to me. And more, I wanted to just open up the possibilities of what things could mean. So I only did a 3-card spread for my how to move forward towards my goal in the second quarter and the first quarter. But I actually got closer in the second quarter to sort of what I wanted, but it's like it just wasn't quite enough. So for the third quarter, I did a 5-card spread. And when you lay out 5, which I'm just going to put these up on top of something, like 3 feels very bam, 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 and then it kind of wraps up. But if you keep going, let's see if these will all fit. It's like it keeps you moving, and when you add 5 instead of the 3, I feel like it creates like a longer path that is what I'm intending. I want that path to be something that can guide me all the way through the quarter, and I just felt like 3 cards was not quite enough for 3 months as far as guidance. So I'll be doing that for the third quarter with 5, which will probably be this weekend. I kind of have the specific spreads on a schedule. Because again, it's like if I have a plan and I can put it in my planner and be like, Sunday, this is, X Sunday of this quarter, this is the spread I'm going to do. Things go better. And the other one that worked really well second quarter, and so I will absolutely be doing it again, is I was noticing in my journal, and more specifically, I was talking to people. Now that is actually a big difference between first quarter and second quarter. I was talking a lot to my husband, who I would be very frank and honest and be like, I'm trying to do tarot magic to change our house, which is a hilarious thing to have said to my husband, but I did. And God bless him, he just said, okay, babe. And that's how you know you got a good one. Obviously, I didn't call it tarot magic to my mom, unless she watches this one, in which case, Mom, that's what I meant. it was more just like, this is what I'm thinking about, Mom. This is what I'm trying to do. Do you have any ideas? Could you help me with this? Like how do other people remember to do the weird things like clean the baseboards in their closet? Like, where does that come from? You know, it's like this piece of housekeeping that I never quite learned how to do that I'm trying to figure out now. And it's like, because I kept talking about it, it stayed on my brain. And so it became easier to do those things because it was right in the front of my brain. And one of the other people that I was constantly talking to about this was Wendy from Wendy's Occult Compass. And one of the things that I told Wendy that I had done was clean my ceiling fan. You know, it's just one of those things, like, how often do you dust your ceiling fans? I don't know. I hadn't done it in a very long time. And as I was thinking about like luxuriating in my house, one of the things that I had done was go and buy scented candles. I went intentionally. I spent a little more money. I got multiples of the same scent so that they would be everywhere and I could create this waft of this scent all around my house. And one of the evenings where I was sort of sitting on my couch and I had this incredible scent going, I'm just sitting on the couch and I look up and I realize my ceiling fan is gross. And instead of just sitting there, I was like, I would be able to luxuriate in this moment more if I just cleaned it. So I did. And I was telling Wendy that I had cleaned my ceiling fan. And that was one of the things that I had done to help Venus in my fourth house. And later on, Wendy told me, hey, I was thinking about you and I cleaned a ceiling fan. And I have decided that is magic. And why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't you think of that as magic? So now, not only is my tarot purpose working on my house, it's working on a house multiple states away from me and doing magic there also. And I love that and got really excited about it, which helped me change the wording a little bit of this spread. So the first time that I did it, I just did like a block of 6. And it was, how am I doing? It's kind of all I said. And I realized after I got such a boost from knowing that not only is my tarot with purpose working on my house, it's also working on an entirely different house in an entirely different state across the country. I've changed the wording in a way that is perfect. What I did was read the first row on top is, how do I think I'm doing? And then the bottom row is, how am I really doing? And it was so good and I loved it. And so I have that scheduled as the second week of the second month. So halfway through the quarter, I'm going to keep doing the how am I doing block. The reason that I am using a pip deck, now obviously this is not a Marseille style, but that does include some of my Marseilles, is because of the less likely to be emotionally manipulated feel that I have with pips. That does not mean that they are not artistic. It does not mean that there is not an art to all of this. I do not think that these pips are any less beautiful just because they look like playing cards. I don't think that the Marseille pips are any less beautiful because they're a repeat of the pip. It's just that they're less likely to emotionally manipulate me. When I see the 8 of Pentacles, I'm going to think, what do I think of 8s and what do I think of Pentacles? And then I'm going to move on and I'm going to go straight to, what do I think of Queens and what do I think of Swords? And that kind of quick response feels a little more honest when I'm trying to evaluate. And that's what that specific spread is for, is that evaluation process. So I think that that works better. And I liked that quite a bit. And then there were a couple of other spreads that just didn't quite land the way that I had hoped that they would. So I am still sort of, working on shifting those little bits at a time. There were a couple of other specific Sundays, like I wanted the first Sunday of the last month to have like a special spread, and I was trying to think about like how I would want to word that, and I didn't love what I did in the second quarter, but that's how you build something that really works. I would have never landed here if I hadn't said, what I'm doing isn't working for what I want, and then how what do I want? And the more that you start with what do I want to end with, the more you can figure out for yourself how to get there. So I just want to thank you if you stuck around for this whole video. I am really excited and proud of the process that I've created. The new project that I have going for this quarter is really invigorating. The new companion that I have was really magical and meaningful. My superpower is really meaningful. The voice that I chose for my new companion has been perfect. And when you find something that really works for you, you will know, and you will not have to ask anybody, is this right? Because it will just feel so right to you. And the parts of this that feel right, I know are right, and I will not be changing for a very long time. And then you have parts like certain spreads that are still shifting, like doing 5 instead of 3, and asking, 2 different questions in the spread I'm doing with a pip deck. Those things you can feel it's not there yet, but when it gets there, you can tell, and it's really exciting and invigorating and just keeps you going in your practice. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Again, if you watch this far, thank you so much for listening to me talk. What does your practice look like? Do any of these things look cool? Are you going to try any of them? Please feel free to leave me comments. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And hopefully there will be more videos coming soon as I keep perfecting my tarot with purpose practice.